Hey guys, John here with another video on the ROG Xbox Ally X. A lot of you guys have had such positive feedback on my first review video of this. If you haven't seen it, please go check it out. I'll throw the thumbnail and the link right here. I figured I'd do a follow-up video because I was just going to install a lot of different games that I want to play personally and just try them on my own, but I figured it might be helpful to just contribute to the overall benchmarks and gameplay tests that I've been seeing on YouTube with my own. With me, I have installed pretty much almost every single third-party and official game store on the Xbox Ally X, including Steam, Ubisoft, Epic Games, and so on. I'm going to test around 10 games all natively installed, running on the device, so no cloud streaming, no remote play. And I'm just gonna go ahead and test it both in handheld, maybe 17 watt performance mode, and then plugged in on the 25 watt turbo mode. So that'll give a pretty good indication of both styles of play. I'm not gonna tinker or tweak with anything else. Disclaimer, I am not a benchmarker by any means. There are plenty of other tech YouTubers with far more technical expertise and resources than I have, but I wanted to provide my experience. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so here we are on the device. I spent the last 2 days pretty much setting this up, installing everything. Here we are booted up just into the Windows full screen experience right now. I have the Xbox app, and on here, it's actually pretty nice that in the library, it actually shows you everything you own, and not just on Xbox Game Pass, but through Steam, Ubisoft, Epic Games, other third-party launchers. It's really nice to just have everything just on here, so I can just go ahead and boot. I'm just gonna go ahead in alphabetical order, and the first thing I'm actually gonna test is something I do on like all my systems, is actually run 3D Mark. And then if you guys notice in the top right corner, I do have the Armory Crate stats right here, so you can see all the percentages and FPS and everything. So kind of two tests that I think most people tend to do is Time Spy, which is kind of like the classic test in 3D Mark. And then some people also test for Steel Nomad, which is kind of like a ray tracing benchmark. I'm gonna go ahead and run Time Spy, just the normal one, and let's see what kind of scores that I get. We are on 17 watt performance mode, according to the Armory Crate. It did start around 30 FPS. Now it's slowly dropping into the 20s. All right, just finishing up with the last few tests. All right, cool. So we just finished up with the standard 17 watt performance mode without any power in it, and we got a score of 3615. This is my first time running this test right here. It's got all the info correct. Now let's try this test with the power plugged in. It is on the turbo 35 watt mode, so let's see if we get a better result. All right, immediately off the bat, we see much better FPS results because it's plugged in right now. All right, we just finished the test and plugged in on the 35 watt turbo mode. We actually got a score of 4024, which is an increase over the last one. I'm gonna go ahead and test the other test that people do, which is Steel Nomad, although I've heard that the recommended one to do is actually Steel Nomad Lite, because it's the benchmark for lightweight gaming PCs, because otherwise the regular Steel Nomad, especially Speedway, those are like for the insane desktops, gaming desktops and such. I'm gonna go ahead and do it on the performance mode handheld, and then we'll plug it in and do the full 35 watt mode. Steel Nomad Lite is running. It's hovering around the mid 20 FPS mark right now. I expect it to go a little bit down. All right, so it looks like we got a score of 3202 for Steel Nomad Lite. That was my first time running this test. Let's see what the performance would be with this plugged in and in 35 watt turbo mode. All right, off the bat, we are hitting the higher 20s, almost 30s, but still hovering around the 20-ish range. All right, we have our final result, 3372, which is better with it plugged in for sure, and we actually got some estimated game performances here. These were the 3D benchmark results, both in 17 watt performance and in turbo 35 watt. These are useful, especially if you use 3D benchmark, because then you can compare your results online to others. So hopefully my contribution here has helped you guys see it, but let's go ahead and test some real games now. So the first game in alphabetical order that we're gonna go in is testing Assassin's Creed Shadows. We're gonna play this off of the Ubisoft app. So let's go ahead and check it out. It's taking a little bit to compile shaders, probably for the first time since I'm running it. We have booted up to the main menu, it seems, for the memory selections. But obviously we're here to play Shadows. So after the opening cutscene, we're kind of in our first area. We're gonna actually start freely walking about
I gotta say off the bat, handheld mode, it's a bit rough. We're looking at about 18 FPS, upwards of 20, sometimes dips, but I would not say that this is like playable at all at this current stage. All right, so we're on 35 watt turbo mode right now. The FPS has gotten better. We're looking at 22 FPS right now. It's definitely at least a like 5 to 6 FPS improvement. Let's go look in the options. So in here, let's adjust some settings. I want to adjust it to 720 resolution, set this upscaler to performance mode, and I'm gonna also go ahead and turn on frame gen. Now with all those settings set, we are looking at a pretty nice about 52 FPS. While some people have their opinions of frame gen, I do think it is really nice to have for something like handheld devices. Playable FPS for sure, right? We're definitely getting above 30. We're hitting 50 consistently right now. Sometimes dips to the mid 40s, but I would say you can definitely play this on your handheld device, right? Like obviously we're not looking at like a console-like device to play one of the most recent AAA games, but this is more than playable should you desire to play on your handheld device like the Ally X, for example. So I'm pretty satisfied with the performance tuning of this game. Going down the list, the next game I want to test is actually a complete remake of a very old school game that I used to play a lot, and that is Gears of War. This is Gears of War Reloaded. We're going to run this through the Xbox app. It's downloaded through Game Pass on this device, so pretty excited to try this out. All right, here we have Gears of War Reloaded. So let's go ahead and just try this game in native 1080p resolution. Looks like we have VSync, and I'm not going to put a frame rate limit just to see what the raw performance looks like. And luckily we do have a performance benchmark in this game, so I'm just going to go ahead and run that. Off the bat right now in the performance benchmark, we're actually hitting like 70 FPS, somewhere between, and then dipping into the mid 50s. So somewhere between like the 50 to 70 range. Average frame rate 73 FPS, 1080p with high texture quality, and pretty much everything else mostly on high. That's pretty good. I mean, if that was handheld mode, I mean that was pretty good stats. Let me go ahead and just plug it in for 35 watt turbo mode. All right, I mean we are seeing higher FPS for sure. We're hitting the 90 FPS range right now. Okay, test scores. 85 FPS average. Not bad, not bad. So honestly, overall, I am very impressed with the performance of this game running this benchmark. Like you can easily play this handheld or plugged in and expect a good over 60 FPS average. So good job, Gears of War Reloaded. Okay, next up, I have a favorite for the Cyberpunk fans out there. I have Ghost Runner 2. I'm gonna put this through Steam. First time running a lot of these Steam games. We're gonna have to download some libraries and compile shaders and all that, so I'm gonna give it a minute. So here we have it. We have Ghost Runner 2. It's a sequel to one of my favorite AA games of the last 5 years. It's kind of like a cyberpunk inspired action game. All right, so out of the box, it actually just already preset us to 720 resolution right away. Pretty much high settings except for low post-process quality. VSync is off, and then I want to increase my FOV. Otherwise, I'm just going to leave all the settings as is, as they have set it. All right, so I think off the bat, what I'm seeing is about mid 40 FPS right now. We're getting close to 50 in some parts. Let me get into some action and see what I'm looking at. It's definitely dipping into the 40s if there's like a lot of stuff happening. But for the most part, I would say this is pretty playable. I mean, if your definition of playable is again like 30 FPS, it's consistently hitting above 40. All right, now let's try the game with the power plugged in, 35 watt. So with it plugged in, we're actually hitting above 60 FPS now. We're in the mid 60s, about 65, 68 right now. Yeah, it definitely feels a little bit smoother for sure. But once we get into more like action-filled areas, a lot of heavy stuff, it is dipping slightly below 60. So it's not quite perfect 60. Overall, it is pretty playable in both handheld and with the power on. And I'm sure if you tone down some of the settings, you can get it to a more consistent 60 FPS for sure, I believe. But yeah, overall, I mean, hey, this is a recent AA game with some really heavy cyberpunk graphics and action. So happy to see that this is for sure playable on the handheld, both plugged in and not. For our next game, we're going to play something that's been on my bucket list to play for a while, and that is Hi-Fi Rush. We have it on Steam, and this is by Tango Gameworks, and it does support controller, so I'm happy to try this on here. We have loaded up Hi-Fi Rush. I don't believe this title is that demanding. In fact, I'm just more in love with the art style of this game, but let's go ahead and try it. All right, so right off the bat, they have put us at 720 resolution, frame rate's at 60, but I'm gonna go ahead and just set it higher. Graphics preset is actually already set to medium for us. So I'm gonna just go ahead and play this on performance mode 17 watt, and let's see. All right, we are in the first area of the game. Right now, the FPS is actually hitting above 100. We're looking at about 103 FPS right now. Sometimes it dips into the 90s, but so far this is running buttery smooth, man. All right, finally getting to some action of the combat phase right here, the intro. We are looking at about 90 FPS still. Honestly, dude, I love the graphics for this type of screen right now. There's some cool graphics right here. This is 100% playable in handheld mode. In fact, I think we could even up the graphics. Let's do that. I'm gonna just go ahead and set everything on high, because I think this game can tank that. This game right now on all high, I'm still in the tutorial, but yeah, it's hitting in the 90s, sometimes hitting up to 100s, but yeah, definitely on all high settings. This is extremely playable. This is like one of the best of games to test out like the device like this, because it's actually using the 120 Hertz VRR screen. But let's go ahead and plug it in as well. Let's see if we get any FPS increase in that. Okay, so with it plugged in, we are seeing FPS hitting about right under 120. Definitely about like a 20 FPS improvement by having it plugged in. So you are more consistently hitting right under 120. I think this game only lets you go all the way up to 120. So as long as you're consistently getting close to 120, I mean, you're basically playing this game as best as you could, and you taking full advantage of the 120 Hertz VRR screen. So I also want to point out we have no upscaling involved at all as well. It's just pure raw performance on all high. So great game, great example of something that runs extremely well on the Xbox Ally X. Kind of like a stand-in next game, I'm now going to test Hitman World of Assassination. This is through Steam. Looking at the graphics, we've been set to 1080p resolution, V-Sync's on, ray tracing is off, level of details about medium. So I'm just going to go ahead and let's do a benchmark test. All right, so I'm in the Hitman 3 Dartmoor level. I know this game has a built-in benchmark, but it's not quite what I wanted to show off. So I'd rather show off some fun stuff in here. But anyways, we are looking at handheld mode performance, 17 watts, about 55 FPS. This is without ray tracing or anything else enabled right now. So it is in the playable state, although you're not quite hitting that 60 FPS mark. Bubbling up, turning on FSR 2, we actually see the game go into the 70 FPS range in here. So it's definitely going a bit higher. With FSR turned off, we're just plugged in. We are also hitting kind of the mid 60s range with it plugged in with no upscaling at all. And then with FSR and having it plugged in on 35 watts, we are seeing it hit above 80 and touching 90 FPS. So it's definitely pretty playable. I think it's up to you to tone down some settings or enable certain things, but so I would be happy playing this game on this handheld. It's still a great looking game, and I know they're developing the James Bond game next year, but this has always been a really good benchmark test. All right, next up, we kind of have a pretty good game right here. I have Indiana Jones and the Great Circle through Steam. This is going to be an interesting game to test, as this is a recent AAA game within the last year. It is sort of demanding. In fact, it's demanding that NVIDIA use this as kind of like a showcase for some of their new graphics cards. So I'm really interested to see if this is in playable FPS. All right, we have loaded into the game main menu screen. Let's look at our video options. Currently, it's actually playing at a native 1080p resolution right now. It's full screen. In fact, they even set our FPS limit to 40. I'm just gonna go ahead and set this to 120. The graphics quality is automatically set for us at low. I might go ahead and just respect that. I'm not gonna try to go any higher than it, but we have no upscaling right now, so I'm just gonna test it right at native resolution. All right, so right now I have an old save file. I'm at the museum right now. Off the bat, I gotta say we are looking at about a slightly above 40 FPS mark right now, and for a kind of a cinematic game, I'm okay with this. I am pretty happy that it is above 30 FPS right now, and there's a lot of stuff happening in this scene. There's a lot of lighting, a lot of objects. This is definitely in the playable category, I think, off the bat. Now let's see what happens if I go ahead and enable. I'm gonna enable some upscaling. I think it's gonna require me to exit full screen mode. Go ahead and do some FSR, and let's go ahead and do performance. So with FSR enabled, we are actually seeing right above 60 FPS, about 61, 62 in this scene alone. So I'm quite happy about that actually. This definitely makes this game seem pretty playable. And I'm just gonna go ahead and also just gonna turn on frame generation as well. And I think that will get us for sure. We're looking at about 85 to 90 FPS right now. So this is definitely in a really good playable range. Prefer to turn on some frame gen. I think this will definitely hit your marks, and it'll take care of any lows that you might have in 17 watt performance mode, handheld mode. But let's go ahead, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn everything off, and let's test it plugged in. Plugged in with just the normal low graphics, no upscaling, no frame gen. We are looking at about a 50 FPS in this scene. So a slight improvement over just having it handheld without being it plugged in. All right, now we are playing on FSR performance mode, no frame gen right now, but that does bring us up into the mid 70 FPS range. As long as you're hitting the above 60 FPS mark constantly, this is probably what I would do. Frame gen on top, you are probably looking, at above 100 FPS. So yeah, I would say, depending on what your options are, your preferences, this game is definitely playable at any of the above 60 FPS ranges, as long as you enable FSR and frame gen, or just one standalone. So yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy that I can actually play this recent AAA title either plugged in or not, and expect a decently above 60 FPS average options depending on how you set your video settings. All right, next up, I do have one of my favorite IPs from Rockstar, which is Red Dead Redemption. This is I believe the remaster from just a few years ago. This is going to be running off of Steam, so I'm really curious to see how well this will do. This is one of the games that, obviously, even though it's through Steam, it still boots up the Rockstar client, so pre-compiling the shaders right now. All right, so you're immediately presented with the quality preset. So I feel like this game could add like a medium, but let's give it a try first. All right, so we're looking at a 1080p resolution. It's at 120 hertz, frame rate cap at 144, VSync is on, triple buffering's on. Preset is medium. I'm gonna go ahead and just do native right now, but we can try to tinker with some of the upscalings later on. Right off the bat, we are getting at about right under 60 FPS, I would say. Like, it's kind of like in the high 50s. Honestly, out of the box, yeah, medium, native, I mean, definitely playable, but it's not quite hitting above 60 FPS mark, I would say. All right, we'll go ahead and set it to FSR3 performance mode, and let's give it a shot. Looks like it was about the mid 60s. I saw it hit 70 once. So it's a little bit of improvement. All right, so now I have it plugged in. It's at 35 watts, and immediately, that's actually the biggest boost. I turned off upscaling, so we're at native resolution, and it's already looking like it's at about 80 FPS. I'm dipping into the high 70s. Extremely playable. I'm happy to play it like this way. And then I'm sure if we also turn on FSR upscaling, we'll probably be a little bit more consistent above the 80 FPS range. But yeah, so far I'm pretty happy that I'm able to play a latest Rockstar game. Yeah, if in handheld mode, I'm sure you could turn down even more stuff to try to hit above 60, but we're definitely getting over 60, in fact over 80 plugged in and with FSR turned on as well. All right, next up, I got an interesting game to test. I'm gonna test Civ 7 on Steam. All right, let's see if Civ 7 works on the Ally X. It's probably not gonna be my preferred way to play, but I am interested to see how well the game runs. Out of the box, it's telling us to set our graphics profile to low and with standard colors. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. We are in full screen mode. We're gonna try to do it at 1080. VSync is on, no frame rate limit. Graphics profile is low. I'm going to try to do it without any upscaling, and this game does have a built-in benchmark, so I'm going to go ahead and run it. I'm going to run it just in handheld mode without the power plugged in. All right, looks like it is running the benchmark right now. We are actually getting pretty decent FPS right here. We're looking at about the mid 90s. It's teetering 100, sometimes dropping to like the high 80s. I think it's stabilized. It's actually way above 100 now. Wow. All right, let's look at it. So we are, I'll be honest, I don't really like how they presented the graphics benchmark. But I mean, overall, I mean, I was looking at like above 100 FPS for most of it, with some spikes a little bit lower. And if that's the case, that's pretty impressive. All right, let's just go ahead and run the graphics benchmark with the plugged-in 35-watt turbo mode. All right, with the docked, I mean, we're seeing like FPS high into the hundreds, like 50s, 70s, and dipping back to 120. Yeah, plugged in, definitely, you're going to be taking advantage of the 120 hertz screen for sure if you need it for Civilization. So I don't think you need to worry about it at all. Even though I don't think this game is optimal for playing on a small device like this, it is definitely possible to play a grand strategy game like this on your Xbox Ally X. All right, second to last game, I'm gonna try some Sifu. This has been on my bucket list to play for a while. Been wanting to play this game because it's like an old school Hong Kong action game. It's gonna be from Epic Games because I redeemed it for free. So let's give it a test. All right, we have booted up. Let's take a look at the options for display. We actually don't have that many options to modify. We do have no VSync and everything's already on Ultra for us. So there's not much else to do apparently. So let's just go ahead and give this a test. So right off the bat in the performance mode 17 watts, we are looking at about mid 90 FPS actually, just right out of the bat. This game's not like insanely graphically intensive. I just wanted to show off a game with like a bunch of moving parts with like action and fighting styles. So I think, yeah, like, I'm really happy playing this in handheld mode with above 90 FPS off the bat. All right, with it plugged in, we are seeing it hit above 100 FPS, commonly around the 110s, and you could probably even go up to 120 if you lower some of the settings to have it more consistent. But yeah, this is another example of a great game that you can use to test out the 120 hertz VRR screen on your Xbox Ally X. And yeah, this is definitely one of the best AA games to play with a high amount of action, and it'll run great on your Xbox Ally X. One of the last games, and probably one of the more demanding games, is the recent remastered version of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Now, I don't expect this to run great, but let's give it a test. If this even runs above 30 FPS natively, I'll be happy with it. These shares are gonna take a while, so let's get back. Man, so I'm not sure what's going on, but I keep running into this like fatal error thing, and I've tried doing a Windows full screen experience as well as I'm on desktop mode right now, and no matter what I do, it just will not play through the Xbox Game Pass version. So I'm a little bit bummed about this. Probably have to revisit this later. Maybe there's some kind of like workaround on this, or maybe they'll patch it later. But yeah, currently it's just crashing on my Ally X, so I can't test it, unfortunately. Yep, I even tried to restart it, and I even repaired the files, but yeah, unfortunately just running into this fatal error. But let me know in the comments if you guys know a fix to this, because I'm not sure entirely what's going on here.
All right, so that was my quick benchmark test of about 10 games. Really, I had only one that kind of flopped and wouldn't run. Hopefully they have a fix for Oblivion Remastered sometime in the future. Overall, I would say I am pretty happy with my performance with the Ally X specifically. I mean, like, for the hardest titles, you're looking at playing it above 30 FPS, which is, in my opinion, is the definition of playable, right? Especially on a handheld device. That should be your level of expectation, playing on a Windows handheld device in 2025. Ideally, you hit 60, right? And then if you get up to 120, like, you're probably playing more of a AA title, older title, or a game that's just extremely well optimized, as we've seen with Hi-Fi Rush and Sifu. The fact that all of these games that I showed were basically recent releases in the last 5 years in both the AA and the AAA space, with a good amount of games that were released just this year, I'm happy to say that this device does meet my expectations, and it is somewhat worthy of being justified for about $1,000. You can catch my full review in the other video about all my other opinions, but performance-wise, through these benchmarks, I am pretty satisfied with this handheld, and I do believe this is competitive in the cutting edge of Windows handheld devices. I will be keeping this device. I'll be continuing playing with it. I hope that this quick benchmark test has been helpful for you guys. It's the first of these videos that I've ever done. I'm not a full tech benchmarker by any means, but hopefully some of the games here have proven helpful for you guys if you are deciding to buy this device or want to compare my results to your own. If you like what you see, please subscribe to this channel. Trying to get this over 1,000 subscribers. I'm looking to do probably one with the D-Brand Kill Switch case review on this device specifically, so that comes out in November. Stay tuned for more, and I'll see you guys in the next one.